Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates. It is Thursday, final episode for the week of Equity Mates, not the week of people's working week. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good. Look, this has been a great week. We've tried a first on Equity Mates on AusBiz. Maybe on AusBiz. I haven't checked the historical record. We've split a long-form interview across four episodes, this being the fourth. We've been joined by Gino. So Gino, thanks for sticking with us throughout the week. And over the course of this week, we've started with why microcaps. We've spoken about the opportunity set in Australia and the world. On Wednesday, we did Watchlist Wednesday, and Gino brought us three companies, three microcaps on his watch list. And today we're going to really bring it all together, and we're going to understand how you actually navigate the universe and how you filter through all these stocks. So I guess let's start very broad. You said on the first episode this week, 16,000 stocks in your investing universe. How do you go about filtering them? Talk us through your process.
It can be overwhelming, but I think the secret is to have a true north. And at Spheri, we've got over 100 years experience between us, so we're pretty clear about what we're looking for in a company. We have a focus on free cash flow conversion, so the earnings that are presented in the P&L actually convert into cold hard cash, and that the companies produce good free cash flow. We're also looking for good industries with strong returns. So I think once you've got that true north and you're looking for certain metrics, that universe dwindles pretty quickly. It's particularly microcaps, there's a lot of penny dreadfuls and stocks that promise a lot but are run by charlatans and will never amount to anything. And that's what excites me is if you look at historically, micros have outperformed small and large over the long run, and that's despite all those dreadful companies. So if you leave them out and just focus on the real micros, I imagine performance would be even better still, and that's what we're here to do.
For those that are just starting their investing journey, they're often looking for key metrics that professionals are using. Can you explain why free cash flow conversion is an important metric for you, particularly in this microcap space?
Sure. So by free cash flow conversion, we compare free cash flow. So that is the operating cash flow less capital expenditure. Capital expenditure being buying equipment, buildings. And we compare that to earnings before interest and tax. And because obviously profit and loss statement, can be a lot of accounting trickery.
Massage here, massage
exactly.
there.
Take a big provision one year and then write it back over future years, acquisition accounting, you name it. Whereas cash flow can be manipulated and does get manipulated, but it is harder to do so consistently. So it is a really nice accounting check. But the other issue with a lack of free cash flow is, and this is the case for many microcaps. In fact, if you look at the top 10 in the index currently, only 3 of them make money, and seven of them are burning cash, so making a loss. But even if they're reporting a profit, but they're not producing free cash flow, they're always having to come back to investors. Right? So now, this is where it gets tricky, because if a company is saying, look at all this growth, you just need to hand me a check every year to deliver it. What happens if the market is shut? GFC, COVID. What happens if the share price falls? Then all of a sudden that growth vanishes. And that's when it can get very, very nasty. That's when companies can really get hammered. So we're very wary of companies that are always reliant on coming back to the share market. We prefer to see companies that can fund their own growth. Because worst case, almost like a house, right? If your house falls 40% in value, the bank's not going to call you. You still live in it. It's no big deal. And the same for us. The company will still run. Everything's fine. Whereas if they're continually looking for funding, that can get messy.
I think one challenge that a lot of retail investors have, and I imagine that you would have it in your universe as well, is stock discovery. There's just so much opportunity out there.
Yes.
And you've mentioned one metric there around being profitable, producing free cash flow, converting that to earnings. But when you're actually going about discovering stocks, what are some of the other, I guess, metrics you're looking for or processes you're using? Like, are you starting with a stock screener and filtering on companies less than $1 billion and choosing other metrics, or is it like more qualitative? Are
Yes.
you reading industry reports? Like, what's the process of actually scratching the surface? I guess.
Well, there's three approaches. So, firstly, there's overseas trips. So pre-COVID, we were travelling quite a lot overseas, and attending conferences can be quite helpful. It's almost like a speed dating to discover companies. But our predominant means of finding companies is our screens.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to say Spheria's invested a lot in that. So we have a full-time data scientist. And you've got 16,000 companies. So we're looking at 16,000 companies, and because of our data scientists, we're not only just looking at point-in-time metrics, we can look at trends and we can look at volatility. And we also incorporate machine learning. So the screen will kick up stocks to me, I will yay or nay them, I'll hand them back to the data analyst, and he'll feed into his algorithms to keep improving the algorithms. So we've invested a lot because I think it's important. But that's just the first step, right? That identifies stock, we'll look at it, but then we allocate to an analyst, and that's when the work really begins. That's when we really put the flamethrower down to the heels of the management and get behind the story. So, but it's a lot, and I think it's hard to do without some very clever programming to get through all that data.
You mentioned management there. There's no doubt almost every interview we've had with experts, they always talk about the importance of management and meeting and speaking to management. When you're flying overseas and chatting to companies and all sorts of things, what are some sort of red flags that will come up in conversation for you to reconsider a manager?
It's a good question. I mean, assessing management is very difficult. In fact, near impossible from the outside, because there's so much we don't know about what's happening in the company. For me, the biggest issue I want to get behind is what's occupying their time. Are they playing defense or offense? They're putting out spot fires, or are they trying to grow that business? And if a manager can't articulate to me a clear strategy and where they're taking the business, then that to me is a red flag. That to me says that there's spot fires and there's issues. I'm also interested in management structure under them. So, how many direct reports do you have? Who are they? Has there been any change there? Because often if a business is underperforming or a division is underperforming, they'll shoot that person. So that can also flag issues. The accounting, if they're aggressive with the accounting, then what does that tell me about management? What else are they being aggressive with? So I just like a management that is forthright, consistent, and has a clear path to where they're taking that company. But assessing management can be a lag indicator, right? If it's a great business and the industry is doing well, our management are good. If it's a crappy industry and the business had a few setbacks, our management are rubbish. So you need to be careful, and that's why we spend a lot of time on management incentives. Part of our process is looking at how are management incentivized? How much do they own in the company? And again, that's why we sort of gravitate to family-owned companies, because they're long-term.
I was going to ask you about that. So you've said there that like insider ownership is important. How do you think about, do you have thresholds for how much you want to see like a CEO or a leader owning? And also, how do you think about insider buying and insider selling?
There's no threshold, but we do like to see decent stakes. Having said that, some of these companies, if it's a $500-600 million company and the CEO owns 0.4% of the company, that still can be a material sum of money, if you know what I mean. And there are companies where the CEO's been there like 10-15 years and doesn't actually own that many shares. So sometimes you have to wonder, what's going on here? But generally speaking, you're right. High share ownership does give us confidence that our interests are aligned. Insider selling, we're always very dubious about, because there's always a very nice excuse. But if things are going so well, why are you selling? So that's certainly a red flag for us, and one we pay a lot of attention to.
You mentioned you had 40 to 50 companies, and you've obviously narrowed that down from 16,000. Nice. How do you think about your portfolio construction? And we'll probably get into when you sell and that sort of stuff. But at a high level, how are you actually thinking about your portfolio construction?
I think we're not top down, so we don't take macroeconomic calls. We don't say, "Oh, the German economy is recovering, let's add more to Germany." We don't do that. We're not thematic in any way. It's all bottom up, let the numbers do the talking. And then in terms of construction, we're just trying to get a sensible blend. So I'm looking at blend stocks. Okay, I want some stocks that are turning around. I want some stocks that are going well. I want some contrarian investments. I want some stocks that are loved. I want some value. I want some growth. And we're just trying to get a sensible blend across sectors, countries and styles. We're not going to take big swings and say, "Oh, we're going all out on cyclicals," or vice versa. Because we don't think we have to. We think we can add value through bottom-up stock selection, so we're not going to take those sort of risks. It's really, the macro is really about just managing risk and not getting too skewed in any direction.
Now, Bryce mentioned selling, and this
Yes.
is the thing that I always think about whenever we talk about microcap or small cap managers, which is you pick a winner, you see it run, it crashes through $1 billion, maybe it gets to $1.5 billion, and then do you have to sell because you're a microcap manager and your investors expect you to hold microcaps? Like, do you have any rules around when you have to sell? Does it pain you when that 1.5 billion turns into 25 billion?
Or a trillion?
Like you said in the first interview, Netflix was a microcap. Like, imagine if you still have Netflix today.
We're happy to let others
Of
take
course
the
you're going to
story.
say that. Of course you're going to say
So I
that.
guess,
So
like,
here you go. Look, we have a criteria for when we sell, and it's not necessarily just size. Sonos is one we've just sold. We bought it when it was around $1 billion. It was heavily shorted. The market was worried about Google and Amazon competing. The market thought they were never going to earn a decent margin. That was our thesis. It's cheap. The market's overly worried about these things. When we did our work, we thought, well, they can earn a good margin. We see no reason why they can't. We think, if anything, instead of a risk, there's an opportunity, because we think Google and Amazon may have to pay royalties to Sonos for the IP they're using. So the stock went up to $4.5 billion. At that point, we did exit. And we exit because, it is large, and we want to be true to labour. We want to be a microcap fund. Our thesis had played out, and we thought the valuation was looking, pretty fair to rich. Now, that might have been at $3 billion, it might have been at $10 billion. The other thing with Sonos is also it was very well covered. Had a lot of analysts covering it. But if one of those things, if the stock still looked cheap and there was like 2 analysts still covering it and our thesis hadn't really played out, then we could own it to 4, 5, 6, 7 bill, right? But at that point, we think we've done our job as microcap managers. We discovered it. Now you guys know all about it. And that's fine, we'll leave it to you. Our job is really finding the undiscovered stocks. But what is really nice is that we sell it knowing we're going to find something just as good, right? Whereas in Australia, if I sell something, I have to worry about it hurting me in the index, right? So say I sell Afterpay and it keeps going up, and I don't own it, I look like a fool to my clients. Whereas with 4,100 stocks in the index, if I sell a stock, it literally can't hurt me. Like, I don't really have to think about it ever again if I don't want to. And there's just so much choice that I know I'm going to find something just as good to replace it. So,
it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I know. I just keep thinking about that Netflix example. He could have
It's like
retired.
if all microcap managers found the stocks before everyone else and held them.
Maybe that's our special sauce. We go to the microcap managers and we're like,
we're micro to macro.
Anyway, we'll take that part of the
we'll take
conversation
that
offline.
we'll have to design a product specifically for you guys.
It's called buy and hold. Before we close out, Gino, just want to get your thoughts from a beginner perspective, because that's what we're sort of all about here at Equity Mates, helping everyone start their journey. Where do you see microcaps playing a role in their portfolio? Could you build one entirely of microcaps? You obviously put in a lot of time and effort to find them and research. How would you be thinking about them if you were a beginner?
It's a good question. I mean, I think because there's not as much research and there's not as much attention at our early stage, you need to do your work. And if you don't have the time or the knowledge to do your work, you need to take it easy and be careful. Obviously, they are more volatile than large caps. And so, if you need the money in the next year or two, then you need to be wary as well. But if you have a long time frame, you do have some spare time to look into companies and have a look through the annual report, then I think it's a great place to play because you can really discover some gems. If you like going to the old TJ Maxx or the record store and hunting through the bargain bin, then Micro is this for you.
Nice one. Well, Gino, a massive thank you for the first of our long-form interviews here on AusBiz.
Did I get a plaque or something?
I think it was a success. We'll send it. Yeah, we'll write
we
something
got to
down.
make one up.
Yeah, but look, really do appreciate your time, taking the time to come on.
No, it's great to be here. I
think,
really enjoyed it.
It was a great
It was a good conversation.
So that brings us to the end of the week here at Equity Mates. Hope that you were able to take something from the conversation with Gino that will help you on your investing journey. Plenty to unpack there. So it is on demand on our YouTube channel as well as through the AusBiz channel as well. So you can watch that as many times as you like. But Ren, we'll pick it up again next week.
We will. Hopefully, throughout this week, you've learned that microcaps are more than speckies that you hope are going to 10 bag because they're posted about on Reddit. That is an investing strategy, but that's not the only investing strategy when it comes to microcaps. But yeah, massive thanks to Gino. Hope everyone has a good weekend. Hope Bryce has a good day out on the golf course tomorrow.
Thank you.
And
go the Bombers.
we'll see you all next week.
See you later.